Good morning, everyone. This is Kushal here. I can see there are still a few attendees joining, so we'll give it another couple of minutes and then we'll start. Thank you. Okay, so we'll crack on now. So good morning again, and welcome everyone to the Evosys live webinar on Is Your Business Ready for the Cloud? Firstly, thank you everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule to join this webinar today morning, and we truly appreciate that. Let me introduce you to the speakers for today's webinar. On the right-hand side, this is me. So my name is Kushal, and I head up the local government practice within an organization called Evosys. Evosys is a global organization who is focusing dedicatedly on Oracle cloud applications and technologies. We have a pleasure of serving over 1,000 plus cloud customers globally. And with this experience, we have developed a proven and tested framework, which is value-based delivery, which is all about delivering measurable value to our customers. On the left-hand side, you can see the smart gentleman who is Jason Martin. Jason works as an independent advisor at London Borough of Lambeth. Now, Lambeth is one of the local government organization in UK, and Lambeth is the first public sector organization who migrated their entire back office to an integrated cloud platform. And Jason had a pleasure of successfully leading that program. And today you'll hear more about Lambeth's journey to cloud from Jason. Let me run through some of the housekeeping rules for you. So first of all, this session is being recorded, and the recording of this session will be made available to all the attendees once the webinar has been delivered. We have a question and answer section at the end, so we would be able to address the questions from the audience at the end of the presentation. But if any of the questions are not answered, then we will basically be sending the responses to those questions as a follow-up email. At any time of the webinar, please feel free to raise any of the questions utilizing the chat functionality on the right-hand side of your control panel within the GoToWebinar. And as I said to you earlier, slides will be made available to you all after today's webinar. Okay, so what are we going to cover in today's webinar? So firstly, we'll talk about why organizations are moving to cloud. And we'll be covering the viewpoint of a couple of analysts, which is Gartner and IDC. And we'll be also talking about an Evosys viewpoint and the cloud adoption growth, which we as an organization have seen internally. Then Jason would be covering London Borough of Lambeth's journey to an integrated cloud platform. And most importantly, they went live in just 12 months. So Jason would be talking about what business readiness activities Lambeth did, which helped them to go live in 12 months, which might help those organizations who are planning to embark on the journey to cloud in the near future. And then at the end, we would be covering questions and answers. But as I say to you, feel free to raise questions at any point on the chat functionality, and we'll be addressing those questions after the presentation. Okay, so why organizations are moving to cloud? Now, firstly, we all know that we are living in a strange world where things are changing every day. COVID-19 pandemic has struck each one of us in some way or form. It becomes even more important for the organizations to keep up with the pace and scale of change in order to respond to its customers, suppliers, keep their employees engaged and motivated, and to keep up with the regulatory changes. Now, legacy system, whether it is hosted in-house or whether it is hosted by a third party, in which case it is an hosted solution, often requires skills which are not readily available. And it is difficult to maintain and manage the changes around it, which imposes greater risk. And also there is a dependency on third party. Now I can see most of the audience is from the public sector. I'm sure we all understand that public sector within UK is under tremendous pressure, where budget from central government is reducing day by day, but at the same time the demand for services is rising. And we all can't continue with the same business model. So time is now to change and look into the future. Change is now constant, and it is continuously accelerating. Organizations are migrating to cloud because they need to uh, embrace the innovation model which it brings. When I say innovation model, I'm talking about the upgrades which you get normally from your technology vendor. If you invest in a true SaaS solution, it will basically help you to keep up with the pace of change. It will help you to embrace the innovation model. More importantly, it will provide the platform for agile working, which is so important at current times. If you think that because of this COVID-19 pandemic, anyone can access your back office or front office application from your house without worrying about the security, and still serve your customers and suppliers. Cloud is all about adopting the best business practices. Not only it will automate all your transactional back office processes, but it will also provide an opportunity to rationalize the estate, which will help you in terms of saving money. Now let's hear what Gartner is saying about cloud. So basically, what Gartner is saying is the demand for the on-premise application has sharply declined over the last 3 years, but at the same time, there is a demand in terms of the cloud inquiries. From 2019 through 2022. Also, once you are on the cloud platform, you don't need to worry about the research and development, because the technology vendor would invest heavily into that and would return all the benefits to you as a customer, and you can then in turn return that to your customers, suppliers, and employees. IDC is saying that in 2019, the cloud applications worth of $229 billion have been sold, which will increase to 2022 up to $500 billion. So you can see the demand of cloud application, and it becomes even more important in current times. I would also like to share the viewpoint of Evosys. Now, I'll be very honest, cloud has changed the shape of our organization. Whilst we started as an organization in 2006, but Oracle Cloud was launched in 2013, and we became one of the early adopter in terms of implementing and delivering cloud to our customers. So in 2013, we were just having 82 customers, but you can see the rise. We are in 2020 now. We have delivered over 1,000 cloud customers globally. This is significant growth, and that is only made possible by embracing the new business model and basically bringing the benefits back to our customers. On the right hand side, you can see our growth within UK public sector. So when the cloud was launched, obviously cloud was launched by all the major technology vendors, but Oracle launched in 2013. Public sector within UK, they were scared that they don't want to migrate their entire back office or front office applications to cloud. They wanted to see what other organizations are doing, and they were only migrating bits and pieces to cloud. So things like recruitment or planning and budgeting. So in 2014, we were having 4 customers. But if you see in 2017, Lambeth was the first public sector organization in UK and Ireland to take a courageous decision in terms of migrating the entire back office to cloud. And now you can see after Lambeth, we currently have 85 public sector clients who have adopted cloud and our services. So this is the amount of growth which we as an organization have seen in terms of cloud adoption. And obviously there are various business drivers behind each of the customers. So some of them wants to save on the third party costs. Some of them wants to save the cost of data center running either in-house or maintained by third party. Some of them wants to drive agile working. Some of them wants to rationalize their estate. So obviously each customer is a different business driver, but it is important that customer are also seeing cloud as a platform to transform their business processes, which will in turn bring more efficiencies for them as an organization. Now, before I hand over to Jason, I'll be running one poll question, which will basically help Jason in terms of understanding, the audience. So I would really appreciate if you can respond to the poll question, which you can see on the screen now. You can see people are responding. That's great. Thank you. I'll give another 10 seconds. So I can see 80% have voted, which is great. Okay, so I will close this. I'll share the results. Okay. With this in mind, I will hand over to Jason, who will be covering Lambeth's journey to cloud, and also will be covering what business readiness activities that Lambeth did, which helped them to go live in 12 months. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Kushal. Do you want to just change the slide? Thank you. Okay, guys. So, firstly, thanks for joining the webinar this morning. My name is Jason Martin. I'm an independent advisor or consultant working with Lambeth Council in terms of looking at their large-scale transformation programs, and also part of our transformation portfolio was the implementation of Oracle Cloud. So again, my background is very much around ERP, cloud-based deliveries, and how organizations need to exploit these critical applications in order to get the most benefit from it. So as I do go into the presentation, and I've seen the feedback so far, which is, there seems to be a mix between people wanting to hear about or focus a little bit more on the HR, payroll, finance side, and there's a mix of others. So I'll try and keep this session fairly broad, but informative all the same. As you can see, the slide there that just talks about Lambeth as a council. I just felt that it's worthwhile throwing that out to everybody, that you can read at your leisure, to say, actually, this is what the organisation did. It's typically a very large local authority with many different disciplines that needs to be covered off, and it's around £1 billion gross expenditure per annum. So again, it might be similar to some of the authorities that you work in yourselves or have had experience of. Kushal, next slide. And again, this is some information that's out there in the public domain. Back in 2017, there were some significant challenges within local government, and those challenges have just been made worse with COVID and various other spending targets. But there was a clear financial challenge for Lambeth. There's a high amount of money that needed to be saved as part of austerity, and we really needed to find ways of how we can make our back office systems, Lambeth back office systems, far more efficient, far more effective, and reduce the amount of failure within the organisation. And that's not just down to a new application and going digital and going to the cloud, but there are also some behaviour challenges that needs to be overcome within that. In addition to the challenge around technology, there's also a clear challenge for Lambeth because they were moving to a new civic centre. And again, it felt that there was a clear opportunity that couldn't be missed of trying to implement new working practices when you're moving into a new building, and it felt that everything was new, everything was fresh. And again, it felt as though that as an organisation, where Lambeth wanted to get to was new building, new processes, and try to remove some of the old poor behaviours and bad habits that were inbuilt into organisational processes before. Similarly, Lambeth had been part of a One Oracle shared service platform. So this was more a shared Oracle instance of release 12, I think it was. And that shared instance was shared by 7 other councils. And that was always a difficult compromise to manage, because we all had to have the same solution. We all had to have the same configuration. And again, to try to get changes through, to try to make sure that Oracle could meet the way that your organization wanted to operate, doing it with 7 partners, we probably felt in the end that 7 was too much. And again, this was another reason and driver for change. So just encapsulating what I've just said, within the Lambeth journey back in 3, 4, 5 years ago, and when we start to take those decisions to move to the cloud, it was very much about moving to a new office, moving to a digital platform, and how we could bring all our multiple projects and programs together, so we had that clear governance and that clear understanding of direction. And I think Lambeth ought to be commended also, because they were very, very clear about their direction and where they wanted to get to. And that's also going to help colleagues around this webinar think about, actually, is there a clear organizational objective? Is there a clear goal? Because that's where we need to get to in the end. Michelle, I think we've got a polling question next, isn't there?
Yes. So Nivida, if you can go through the next polling question, that would be really helpful. So, I mean, audience, I hope you are able to see the screen. I think before Jason covers, the drivers behind why Lambeth moved to cloud, I think we would really appreciate if you can just answer, this particular polling question. Okay, I can see people are responding. We've got about 40 odd responses. We'll give it another 10 seconds for people to respond. Okay, I think Nivida, if you can just close the question and share the results. So over to you, Jason.
Thank you. So just recapping, why Lambeth moved to the cloud. It was to provide space and provide some cost savings. So again, that's a civic centre move. That's trying to make the back office processes more efficient. There's also a drive there to standardize process. What the view was is that by moving to the cloud, it helped us to reassess and re-quantify our data. It helped us to understand the things that were important to us, and it was like hitting a massive reset button. The third thing was around keeping our systems up to date. So, given a large complex organization, you've got many different systems. Sometimes they always couldn't be managed effectively, or it took quite a niche skill set to do some things. So again, it was an opportunity to have a look to see how we can integrate our data into the cloud, which will then enhance our reporting, and which will then give us some insight into our business processes and how our business processes could affect the outcome of reports that were delivered. Again, point 4 is around providing a technology platform for the future. And again, if you think of where we are now, we do so much more things on our mobiles, we do so much more things remotely. We still have the same security considerations, GDPR considerations, and that's really, really important. I think by going to the cloud, it gives you the opportunity to encapsulate all of those challenges into one place, because you know you're sitting on an infrastructure that is digital ready. And one of those things, and I'll share this with you, I had a call from a council 3 weeks ago, and they asked me about performance issues. And I actually said that in old money, in old ERP thinking, we always worried about performance. Could the system go fast enough? Now with the cloud, you don't worry about the performance. You know, if you're using Oracle, that's what Oracle give you. But B, that infrastructure is there and it's scalable. So again, there are some things that you used to worry about and which used to keep you asleep at night in the past, which you no longer have to worry about, because you're sitting on that infrastructure, you're sitting on that backbone. And this actually allows us in turn to focus on delivering services to those people that need it most, those people that are vulnerable, but also to deliver services to within a large organization. And again, it's really orientating teams to understand the demand that's placed on making sure that your processes are correct, the requirements around failure demand. And again, by standardizing your processes, by understanding your data, you can really reduce some of those things, which in effect allows you to deliver the service that you want to. Kushal, one more. Just to give you some contextual overview, and if we just go into the world of Oracle, so Lambeth have implemented Oracle Cloud, and as Kushal said, we did that in a remarkably quick time. And we will talk about some of those things that you need to be aware of in order to help you get there. And I'm sure that what I describe will be things that you all know already, about clear governance and so on, but I will touch that. But in terms of the footprint, because I think the footprint's also important to understand. So when Lambeth went live, they went live with the core HR module, which included performance and appraisal, learning development, goal management, exactly what's said on the slide there, as well as Taleo. We also went live with payroll, so there was quite a complex payroll solution that needs to be implemented, and Lambeth were the first customers to go live with payroll. And there were some significant lessons learned around payroll. I think it is most definitely achievable, but it does take resource, it does take effort to actually get that over the line at the timescales that you want. And I think money spent on getting the resources in place early is money saved in the end. In terms of the ERP platform, it's very much typical. So in addition to the typical modules such as core financials and procurement and accounts receivable, there's also enterprise planning and budgeting. And more recently, Lambeth have implemented GRC, which is the global reporting and compliance module. And again, I think that module is an excellent module because it allows you to look at compliance issues that you may have, segregation of duties, but it does point you to those hotspots particularly quickly. So as you can see, that's quite an extensive application footprint. I think also planning and budgeting has been implemented at Lambeth, but that's quite a broad application footprint. And again, if you just look at, there's a bit of a depiction of, we've used PaaS and we've used our own middleware to make sure that we can integrate our data from our other systems. So we've got Mosaic, Lambeth for the adult social care and children's, there's Northgate for housing, Contender for other systems as well. So again, all of that is all fed back into Oracle. So Oracle is the master and owns all of that data and makes the payments and is the core transaction hub and reporting hub for the council. Next slide, Kusha. So if I just talk in a little bit more detail about that journey to the cloud, and so the program started in March 2017. As we said, it was delivered within 12 months, and I have to say, I think it was a smooth transition overall. In terms of the factors that made it a smooth transition, we had very good clarity. So there was clarity from the onset about what the organization objectives were. It was to move from the one Oracle platform with 6 other councils, and it was to shape and get the organization ready so that we can start to move in a much more agile and flexible way. So we understood the complexity. So at no point was there a view that actually to move from where we were to the cloud was going to be easy. So again, it is about clarity. It is around getting the resources in place quite early and quite quickly. And I did speak about payroll earlier, and I think payroll is a classic example where if you are going to implement a payroll solution, you're going to need to do parallel running. You're going to have to train one team to keep your existing payroll in place and another team to have the bandwidth to learn about the new processes in the new system. You can only do that by replicating teams. I've been in other councils where the view has been, well, actually, we don't need to replicate teams, we're going to cost cut. And it's ended up taking longer and more costly to implement. So you do need that level of engagement. And it is around being clear to the organization that if you want to embark upon hitting a target and hitting a go live date at a particular time, it requires the investment in the resources. So it's about being clear about your subject matter experts from accounts payable, your subject matter experts from the finance team, procurement teams, and so on. And also, it is an opportunity for those people to join a project team, because some of those people become subject matter experts. Some of those people prefer to work on projects going forward, and they can still be an asset to your organization because they understand how the business operates, but they also understand how to get the most out of the solution. And you can only pick up those skills on by colleagues working dedicatedly as part of a project. I'll just go on to point 2, which is around change management, and that played an absolute crucial role. And I think in terms of change, everyone says change management is really important and it's not the technology, but I cannot emphasize how much it is important to get your change management plan in early. It is very much about working side by side with the project team to understand these are what the new processes are. This is how your current processes change. This is how you can use the solution to its best ability. And as much as it plays a crucial role, you also need to have a very, very clear role of how that spans out across the organization. Because to implement a cloud solution, to implement a digital platform within any organization, it is not just about IT. It is about speaking to those teams, understand how these changes will affect a social worker, understand how it affects payments to foster carers, housing payments, understand what that means in reporting. And again, you need to go through these things really quickly and really early. Okay, I provide an example where we have project accountants, and we didn't use the project accounting module in our previous incarnations of Oracle. And the view there is that the organization wanted people out in the business and budget managers to become more self-reliant. In order to become more self-reliant, we had to teach them new modules and new skills. So now a capital project manager who's building a school or a house can run their own report to see exactly how much spend is being made against a particular project. And they can understand where they are in the forecast. They can then see where their invoices are against their POs and their contract purchase agreements. And again, if we didn't speak to those guys really, really early, we wouldn't know how to say to them, well, actually, this is how your process needs to change. This is how you're going to get help. This is how you need to record that transaction. This is how you need to talk to the supplier in terms of quoting the PO and the reference number and the CPA number. And again, once those things are done early, the narrative changes as into why there's a problem. It's not a problem because Oracle can't do it, or it's not a problem that your platform can't do it. It's more a problem that the business hasn't changed. So again, it's really, really important to understand that dynamic all the way through. In terms of benefit realization, benefit realization is really key, because you do want to be able to replay back to the organization how things have changed. And most of the time, things change for the positive, but often the teams within the directorates don't see it as a positive, and it's sometimes quite difficult to quantify that. So often, you know, we speak to teams and we're saying to them, well, actually now you are recording your sick more effectively. Now you are recording your annual leave more effectively. Now you are becoming more efficient. And it's about having that discussion that says, this is how long it's taking you to do things. This is the business decisions that are being made. You know, another example would be accounts payable invoice payments. How quickly can an invoice get paid? Does that mean that once invoices start to get paid more quickly, can there be discounts applied to early payments? And again, there's some savings that you could start to think about, because your processes are now becoming a little bit more streamlined, a bit more effective. The teams that are using these processes are also becoming more confident and more efficient in using them. Just moving on to point 3, and just overall, you know, in terms of a typical ERP implementation versus a cloud implementation, I think the significant difference there is that you see the cloud platform straight away. You know, I've experienced other implementation where you don't see the solution until UAT, and it's still not quite what the organization wants, and it can cause delays to go lives. But actually, you can get the cloud solution in place immediately, so your teams and colleagues can start to understand it, can start to try and learn, and they can learn that alongside your implementation partners. So typically, the normal route of an implementation will definitely be to start your conference room pilots, or to get some high level agreement as into where you want to get to. All right, and that agreement is essential in focusing on priorities and ensuring that deadlines can be met. So you'll go through your early governance stage, you'll go through your conference room pilot sessions, and you'll also have a significant consideration around data migration. And this is one of the bugbears in getting ready for the cloud, because you need to have an honest viewpoint as to the quality of your existing data. Do you think your data is good enough? Do you think it's accurate enough? And can it be transformed into your new solution? So if I look at in the Lambeth instance, for example, the view was taken and the advice given was to not migrate POs. And quite a lot of the organizations said, no, we need our POs. But when we went through it in more detail, we understood that a lot of the PO information wasn't cleaned. It wasn't within an accounting year, with the exception of capital POs. So we took a view that we didn't want to migrate it. It meant that we spent more time teaching the organization how to raise POs properly, how to get the data right, all right, so that actually that whole process was an opportunity to cleanse. Another good example was around the migration around accounts payable and open invoices. We took the view to run our legacy system in parallel for 3 months to clear down our open invoices, because we knew that actually doing the data migration on open invoices was always quite difficult, and there were some things that you were just never going to get. So again, it's about taking that pragmatic viewpoint around what data you want to keep, what data you need to migrate, and how much time and resources it's going to take to reconcile. With data, you have to test, test, and test. There is no shortcut. And if you do take a shortcut, there's a very, very good chance that you will suffer at the end. So it is about cleansing that data. It is about understanding that data. It is about taking only what you need. In relation to accounts receivable, I think the data migration constraints are a little bit more significant, just because you might be migrating data for adult social care, which might have particular rules about their retention periods and what you might need to do with your customer records. So again, I think a little bit of time understanding your data migration around accounts receivable will pay dividends in the end. And once you go through your data migration process, you've done your CRPs, you can then really start to work through your organizational impact assessment, because now you've got a view of what the solution is going to be. You now know exactly how your solution is going to change. And by knowing exactly how your solution is going to change, it means that you can be really targeted about your business change. And business change, I have said it's essential, but also it's a great opportunity to use people within your councils to deliver that change, because change is always delivered and received a lot easier by people within the council speaking to each other. And that doesn't mean you won't need any third-party support and guidance, but what it does do, it does make it much more of an owned by the council or owned by the organisation rather than being owned by somebody else. And that's a significant challenge on many implementation. It is about ownership, and it has to be clearly owned. It has to be clearly owned and sponsored from the very top of each organisation. And I think that always comes into play when you talk through aspects around your program boards and how that's governed. Your program board will be supported by your typical project setup, which will have a series of workstream leads mixed with your implementation partners, subject matter experts, plus some of your own business experts. And then it's about being transparent. These boards need to sit frequently, whether it's every 2 weeks or whether it's every 4 weeks or whether it's around key milestones. And then you should really, really discuss your issues in an open and transparent way, okay? And you need to discuss your issues early. And that's to sign off a mature, effective and functional board where your issues can be described. You can then revert to what your organizational objectives are and your program objectives are, and then it can help you get to a point to drive the organization and drive your stakeholders and implementation partners along with you. And I must say that, I mean, I chaired the Lambeth program boards along with the SRO, and we felt that that was one of the core successes of the program, that we were able to see things early, we were able to discuss them early. That didn't mean that we agreed all the time, but what it did mean is that once we made the decision, invariably we stuck to that decision. And then once we went through the CRPs and being clear about the organisation impact, it was about making sure our program board was a functional program board. So rather than people join the board who will just listen for the hour and maybe take back a few actions, we assign them with varying varying directorates. So if there were particular issues, there was a lot more ownership about what the directorates were doing, how we could support them, what their concerns and challenges were. And then we start to talk about their readiness. We start to promote how ready they were for the change. We worked with them to understand what help they may need from the project team. The project team took on some of the risk, and the service also took on some of the risk, which then meant that actually we were able to monitor and control them in a far more better way. And I think if you look at Hamid Baradia, who is the Assistant Director at Lambeth, his summary says we achieved a transition to the cloud in 12 months within budget and no great drama. Of course, there was no great drama. That's because we had an effective board. That's because we was clear about our objectives. That's because we was all working together to achieve the outcome. And again, you know, if there was a challenge, we typically addressed it immediately. In terms of point 4, you know, it was about working through cross functions. So we enable people to work cross functions. And again, you know, my role in terms of that independent advisor was that I wasn't vested to any particular directorate. You know, ultimately it was Lambeth's project, and I was there to make sure that the wheels stayed on the road and that we were driving forward at all times. Just a couple of things in terms of enterprise planning and budgeting. There's quite a lot of work done about trying to emphasize to the organization what a good employee looked like and what a successful employee looked like. And if you was a head of service or a director or any manager that had budget responsibility, it was trying to help them and tell them that actually we're putting in these new tools and this new functionality to support you, to enable you to become more efficient and more practical. And again, it was about trying to understand actually who are our budget managers, working out who they were. What was the training those budget managers need? How were they going to get friendly and get used to the new systems? Because there wasn't always going to be an accountant sitting there to give them all the information that was readily available, because we explained how all the various parts of this complex machine link together, whether it's raising the PO and raising that effectively, to following the right procurement guidelines, or to be an effective line manager by ensuring that teams recorded their sick leave and holiday absence and so on. It's about really trying to understand, you know, how that all worked together. Performance management being another example, you know, implementing a performance management solution that was integrated with your learning and development. So if you'll do your appraisal, you know, and because you started to have better data about what people's roles were or previous roles, you can then work out what is their learning development plan, where do they want to get to in the future, and so on. And again, all of that allowed us to build better observability across the solution and across the platform. Kushal, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So just in summary, so the rollout of Oracle occurred over a long Easter weekend, which I think is always a good time if it falls at the beginning of April. So it was a year-end go live, and we managed to roll out to 800 core users within that Easter weekend. And those core users were basically your requesters, your requisitioners, your payroll team, your HR team, your finance team, and all your approvers. So again, you know, that worked out to be around 800 people, and then we brought the remaining self-service users on in the following weeks after that. And I think overall, I think that was quite a successful rollout. It's quite difficult because there's quite a lot of work to be done on user profiles and so on, and make sure some of those integration points were particularly solid. But I think that worked exceptionally well. In terms of our cutover plan, we planned that meticulously. We almost planned that to every 30 minutes of what everybody was going to do, when, where, how, and how that was structured. And it's really important that once you do that rollout, is to have that early life support mechanism in place. So I typically tend to recommend that the early life support platform is quite a strong team. It's bigger than probably what's needed. It will include your business users, include your project team, it may well include your implementation partner, but that was all designed to make sure the organization remained stable through that period of uncertainty. So your first 2 weeks after go live is normally your most critical time, and you cannot afford to ramp up resources to respond to issues. So again, we had quite a big early life support team just to make sure we can keep the organization stable, just to make sure that we can respond to particular issues, whether that's something that's gone wrong with the payroll, whether that's something that's gone wrong on anywhere else. It was really making sure that we could respond and we can throw all hands to the pump should there be a particular issue, especially around vulnerable people and payments. And then typically, again, we would expand on our board members. So our board members will be then working even more closely with the services so we can filter their issues, make sure that we respond to the absolute priorities and we can get enough time to do other things. And again, overall, we were able to actually start to ramp down within a week and a half our early life support team, because actually we had the capacity, we knew what the issues were, and I must admit it was a relatively smooth go live because we had so many things in place to help us in the eventuality that there was a problem. And again, if you do have a problem or you have problems that go live, it's almost impossible to ramp the resources up. It becomes chaotic. The overall user feedback was positive. Users enjoyed the single sign-on functionality. They also enjoyed the look and feel and the dashboard. So again, it felt very much like they was having an Amazon experience. So again, users really enjoyed that. In terms of next steps, I think we've covered of some of these. Again, it's about extending the functionality. So it is around budgeting, it is around global reporting and compliance, and there's a key thing that the organisation need to consider is that you get quarterly upgrades. And my initial view of the quarterly upgrades were, gosh, this is going to be quite hard work. It's going to be a lot to do. And I think the real lesson learned is it becomes a bit of a machine, and you have to get your teams involved clearly to test the solution and make sure that works. But once you do that, you need to also take the opportunity to evolve with those new processes. So rather than just do the upgrade and choose not to take it, or do the upgrade and don't use it, the upgrades are targeting very small pockets of functionality at a time. And you've got to try and find a way to make sure your business processes evolve with those functionality changes as you move along. So again, there's a clear opportunity there that you should take and you should consider. And also in terms of drop-in sessions, we employed a lot of drop-in sessions to help users. Rather than raise support calls, here's a drop-in session. This is the work that you can't do at the moment. We're here to help you do that. And again, that kind of promoted the learning experience for everybody. Kushal, next slide, please. Okay, and in terms of the way forward, it is around the emerging technology. So a lot of the work that I'm talking to Lambeth about now is around artificial intelligence. It is around machine learning. What can we do with the data? Now you know, for example, that your leave, you've got 10 days left leave, for example. Why are you sending a help desk call to find that out if you can't use the dashboards yourself? It's to type in that information to get the response, and it says automatically you've got 10 days left, 10 days leave left. Typically for invoice payments, there's a high amount of demand around invoice payments. Sometimes POs are raised and they're not received, which causes delays. If we could use AI and expand upon that, we can start to go back to the supplier and say, yes, it hasn't been received yet. This is the reason why. And again, it's time to work through some of those scenarios so that we can actually help drive through some of these lessons learned, and where it costs quite a lot of money to run the support function around that. And there are also simple things you can consider. For example, for those that are in Oracle support teams, you would recognize that vacation rules aren't always put on. Well, now you know when person A is going to go on holiday and they're an approver, you can get an automatic alert remind them how to put a vacation rules on. So again, and that also enables you to deliver a better service to your customers. It's much more customer centric. And again, this really is the way forward about AI. It is about transforming the systems, all right, and it is about reducing failure as much as possible. Kushal. So I'll just quickly touch upon this slide. I think I've covered off all the key points here. You know, if you want to be successful, there are going to be several things in your organization that you will see and you think, my organization is not good at this. Or actually, there may be things you see that your organization is particularly strong on. However, you must have a clear set of objectives, because that will help you deal with conflict resolutions, will help you set the priorities for the things that you're trying to do. Clear governance is essential. It doesn't have to be bureaucratic, but it does need to be based on clarity. It does need to be based on a balanced view of where you need to get to. And I think that was probably the biggest success at Lambeth, that the governance was very, very clear. It was very usable, and we could rely upon that. Alignment of the right resources, service areas, putting their resources in place to support you to deliver the program. Be clear about the data you want to migrate. You need to cleanse the data early. There's no point cleansing it through the project, because it's a project risk. It needs to be part of your business as usual operation, or the things you need to do in the lead up to the project. So you can start that now. Review chart of accounts. Again, if you do want to change your chart of account segments, decide upon them early, because this will affect your data migration scripts. This will affect so many other things you're trying to do. So again, please, please, please get those kind of core decisions done early, because actually, if they're done early, it means that you're more likely to be able to power and get some traction on your project, rather than you feel as though you're stopping and starting all the time. Third-party vendor management, needs to say absolutely essential. What I would say to all councils and all organisations, it's your program, it's your project, it's your deliverable. So you need to be accountable and responsible for your own success. So you need to manage your third-party vendors based upon your clear goals and objectives of the program. And then finally, it is about partnership working, and you can't get to this stage, and you can't achieve this kind of performance without partnership. Kushal. I think we're going to have a poll now. So Kushal, do you want to?
Sure. I think no. Thank you, Jason. Obviously, we've got about 5 minutes left. So what we will do is we'll probably pick up the questions. So we have already received a few questions on the chat. Jason, I'll go through them. So one of the questions which we have received, Jason, is you indicate getting resources on board. Is this from a user or Oracle Cloud support perspective?
I would say from a user perspective.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So and then I think the other questions have been covered, and I can see the response from the audience as well while you were going through the presentation. But yeah, I mean, we have pretty much covered today's session. If you have any question, we still have 5 minutes remaining. So Nivida, if you can unmute, the audience for a while, and then, we can take up any questions if anyone wants to, raise any questions. I can see someone has raised hands. So Philip Smith has raised the hand. Nivida, if you can unmute, Philip, that would be useful.
Yes, all the attendees have the control to the audio now.
Okay,
so they can
so
unmute them.
Okay, so Philip, if you can just unmute yourself, and either you can type in the question on the chat functionality, or else we can address your question now. You're still mute, Philip. So you'll need to unmute yourself. No, I think Nivida, Philip might be facing a few problems.
Yeah,
Philip,
we have got one question there in the chat box.
Okay.
So it goes like, under the current COVID-19 circumstances, does this make upgrading more difficult?
Not, I mean, no, I think you can still do quite a lot remotely. If your team is well engaged and you've done a few upgrades in the past together, then I do think that you can still do an upgrade. It's just different. It's not more difficult. It's just different.
Yeah, I mean, I would also like to, answer this question. So, I mean, obviously, we understand that we are living in a strange time, strange world. I mean, when COVID-19 struck, I mean, initially it was, really difficult for, some of our customers to adopt new ways of working. But, within a week, everyone realized that, this is going to be new norm. So, you can probably see the adoption of Teams over the last 3 months. I mean, we are still running all the sessions via Teams. We are getting support from the customer, and things are still working. So it is, I mean, at all not difficult.
I have a question from I'm a part of a Nordic team. What we see, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. I'm looking a lot to UK because it seems like UK has picked up the needs to be cloud ready, and that the government is doing a lot to guide and to support. Do you see that the public sector in UK is driving them by themselves, or do you see that this is as a demand from the citizen or from a demand from the government? Or could you just say, where do you see the push coming from?
I think it's recognised by there being a clear need. I mean, you're dealing with £1 billion operation that needs to understand and safeguard payments. So where there is the ability to pay, there's the ability for there to be activity that's not quite right. So I think around the GRC module in particular, there's definitely a clear push that says, how can we continue to keep the integrity of our processes? And I think the drive is from every organisation because they want to be efficient.
Thanks.
Okay, we've got another question. We are 3 months into implementation and doing everything remotely. It's challenging, but going pretty well. I can definitely understand that it will be challenging, but then I think the only thing which we would like to advise is there are so many workshops which would be happening remotely, so you just have to ensure that you give your stakeholders, or you encourage your stakeholders to take a break after probably every couple of hours, or because since you are at home, I mean, you'll end up just being on calls. So it is important that you give those breaks in between. Okay, there is one more question. Probably, Jason, your views would be important. Any advice on the project team from the local authority side, and how quickly this needs to be set up, please? Any difficulties with the backfilling, and more importantly, when under time pressure to implement the project?
Okay, there's a bit of feedback there. So I think that you've got to get your team in as early as possible. I think that's key. I think there's always pressure to backfill, and that's something that needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. So at Lambeth, there was no backfilling, with the exception of payroll. But it's really, really important. You cannot deliver the program and you cannot successfully achieve your outcomes if you don't have the business resources embedded. And it has to be sold to your business resources clearly as a learning opportunity, because there are colleagues that will reinvent themselves and go on to other things on the basis of having good business background, working closely with an implementation partner. I think in the instance of Lambeth, it was with Evosys, and there was a good knowledge share in there.
I had a question concerning data protection and security. How were you able to actually provide that kind of data protection and security? A lot of people who migrate to the cloud are very concerned about this particular aspect, And psychologically, it means actually letting go of the data that you have sitting within your organization and having to put it somewhere where you do not control it anymore. So how were you able to actually address those concerns?
Yeah, I mean that was a question that everybody has had, and I think in terms of addressing it, we worked closely with Oracle in our instances to let people know that the data wasn't being taken offshore anywhere, or I think at the time it was the EEA or whatever. So we held it within that. We also looked quite closely at the data that was going into the cloud around children's social care and client records, where we didn't really have that much detail going in about specific examples. But again, it is very much on a case-by-case basis, and we worked with our relevant teams to make sure that was tightened as tight as possible.
Okay, so I think apologies, we are 3 minutes overrunning, but we hope this was really useful for the audience. In terms of the next steps, I mean, obviously we are here to help you. So, I mean, if you want, we can advise and guide on the business readiness sessions, I mean, which will basically help you to ensure that you are business ready before you embark on to the cloud journey. And, you know, we can do that in partnership with Jason, who can bring in all the experience, you know, which he had by successfully leading this kind of programs. We can also do cloud readiness assessment session along with Lambeth. So this is something which, you know, we would be more than happy to support, you know, you with. And we can also facilitate one-to-one lessons learned session with Lambeth. Now, obviously, Jason has covered things fairly on a high level, but if you know, want to deep dive into any specific areas, we would be, you know, more than happy, you know, to facilitate that session with Lambeth. And I'm sure Lambeth, along with, you know, the entire business team would be happy to do, you know, a detailed lessons learned session to those organizations who are, you know, looking to embark on this journey.
A final question, please.
Sure, tell me.
Yeah, this is Salah Idris from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Thank you first for the great session, informative and very clear. Unfortunately, I missed the first 15 minutes. How can I have the full session? Is it recorded?
Sure.
How can I access that?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for your feedback. So, I mean, what we are going to do is we are going to share the recording of this webinar to each and every attendee who was enrolled for this particular webinar. So you will get a recording along with the slides which we went through today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. No, once again, thanks everyone for your time today morning, and we hope this was useful to you in some way or form. And with this, we will conclude this webinar, and we will share the slides along with the recording after this session. Thanks everyone for your time. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.